A billionaire meets with Trump's cabinet. 4 hours later, the President of the United States threatens to block a bridge. Not just any bridge. A $6 billion infrastructure project connecting Detroit to Canada, already built, already paid for by someone else. And the American auto industry? It's now being held hostage by a guy who owns the competing bridge next door. By the time you realize what just happened here, Michigan workers will already be paying the price. Look, while everyone's focused on the southern border, the real economic war is happening up north, and it's not going the way Trump promised. Here's what the mainstream media isn't connecting for you. On February 9, 2026, billionaire Matthew Morone walked into a meeting with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington. The Morone family? They own the Ambassador Bridge, the private toll bridge that's been the cash cow for cross-border trade since 1929. 4 hours after that meeting, Trump posts on Truth Social. He's blocking the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, the brand new publicly owned alternative that would have ended the Morone monopoly. $300 million in goods cross daily. You're supposed to believe this is about fairness with Canada. But let's be real for a second. This has nothing to do with national security, and everything to do with protecting one family's toll revenue. The Gordie Howe Bridge was supposed to open this year. Canada paid for the entire thing, $4 to $6 billion. Michigan owns half. American and Canadian union workers built it together over 7 years. It was designed to ease the choke point at the Ambassador Bridge, where 6,300 trucks and $300 million in goods, including $50 million in auto parts, cross every single day. The Detroit-Windsor corridor is the busiest trade crossing in North America. When trucks wait, American factories wait. When factories wait, workers don't get paid. But here's the thing. The Morone family has spent decades fighting this bridge. They've lobbied, sued, and donated hundreds of thousands to Republican campaigns. And according to federal records, they paid $250,000 to a lobbying firm run by Trump allies just months before this threat. The same firm employed by Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Now, the bridge that would have saved American manufacturers time and money, blocked. Let me walk you through the history here because it matters. Manuel Morone, Matthew's father, bought the Ambassador Bridge in 1979, beat out Warren Buffett to get it. The bridge was already 50 years old then. Morone turned it into a billion-dollar empire. 25% of all U.S.-Canada trade crosses that single bridge. $85 billion a year in commerce depends on those 4 lanes and that 95-year-old structure. Morone spent the next 4 decades fighting anyone who threatened his monopoly. In 2009, Canada offered to buy the bridge for $2 billion. Morone demanded $3 billion plus incentives. When that didn't work, he started filing lawsuits. Lots of them. He sued Michigan, sued Canada, sued everyone. In 2012, Judge Prentice Edwards found Morone in contempt of court for refusing to build highway ramps he'd promised. The judge ordered him to jail. Morone spent 1 night behind bars, the only billionaire I know who went to jail to protect a toll booth. The Canadian government had been planning a new bridge since the early 2000s. The Ambassador was aging, the traffic was getting worse, and one privately owned crossing controlling a quarter of all trade between 2 countries. That's not a safe bet. So, in 2012, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Michigan Governor Rick Snyder announced the Gordie Howe Bridge. Harper called it the single most important piece of infrastructure his government would complete. But there was a catch. Morone had so thoroughly bought off Michigan's legislature with campaign contributions that the state couldn't fund its share. So Canada made an extraordinary offer. They'd pay for the entire thing, all of it. Michigan would own half, but Canada would cover construction costs up front and recoup them through tolls. The bridge would be publicly owned through a joint Canada-Michigan authority. Construction started in 2018. By July 2024, the bridge deck was complete. The longest cable-stayed bridge in North America, 6 lanes, direct connections to Interstate 75 and Highway 401. It would save truckers up to 20 minutes per crossing. The Ambassador Bridge forces trucks to navigate through Windsor city streets, wasting time and fuel. The Gordie Howe goes highway to highway. $2.3 billion in savings for the trucking industry over 30 years. But that's not even the craziest part. Trump's own party is turning on him. On February 11th, just 2 days ago, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 219 to 211 to terminate Trump's tariffs on Canada. 6 Republicans broke ranks. Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin called it awful for our state's economy. Governor Gretchen Whitmer said the bridge is about jobs, good for Michigan workers and good for Michigan's auto industry. But Trump didn't just threaten the bridge. He's been waging a year-long trade war that's hammering American consumers. It started in February 2025. Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Canada using emergency economic powers. The tariffs hit 35% by August. The Tax Foundation estimates it's costing the average U.S. household an extra $1,300 in 2026, and that's just the direct cost. Canada's response? They're not bowing down. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney negotiated a trade deal with China. Canadian tourism to the U.S. is down 40%. 62% of Canadians say they're avoiding American vacations. That's $4 billion in lost tourism revenue for American businesses. Exports of American spirits to Canada plunged 85%. Trump wanted to force Canada to its knees. Instead, he pushed them toward Beijing. And now, American workers are caught in the crossfire while a billionaire family protects its toll booth. Let's dig into the money here because that's where it gets interesting. Matthew Moroun and his wife have donated over $600,000 to Trump's campaign and the Republican National Committee since 2019. In July 2025, Moroun gave the RNC $250,000 in 3 separate payments. One was labeled for legal proceedings. 1 month later, Moroun's company hired Ballard Partners, the same lobbying firm where Trump's chief of staff worked, paying them $250,000 to lobby the White House, Congress, and State Department on international bridges. The pattern is pretty clear. Moroun meets with Lutnick. 4 hours later, Trump threatens the bridge. But it's not just Moroun who's benefiting. Republican politicians who've taken his money are defending Trump's threats. House Speaker Matt Hall received donations from Moroun. He's now saying the Ambassador Bridge is owned by an American company, and a lot of people were happy with just one bridge. Congressman John James got $34,000 from Moroun. He's defending Trump's position. Senate candidate Mike Rogers received over $21,000. He's on board too. Former Republican Governor Rick Snyder, who actually negotiated the bridge deal with Canada, wrote an op-ed warning that blocking the bridge would create one big winner, the Moroun family. He called it reckless and said it would undercut Michigan's economy while shielding a private monopoly. Michigan Democratic Party Chair Curtis Hurtle was more blunt. He said Trump started a reckless trade war, punched our state's largest trading partner in the teeth, and is now trying to punish Michiganders even further for the chaos he created. Now here's where it gets personal. Let's talk about who actually loses here. Michigan's auto industry depends on seamless cross-border supply chains. Parts cross that border 6 to 8 times during production. Every delay costs money. Every tariff adds up. Auto parts cross the Ambassador Bridge up to 8 times as components move back and forth for assembly. When that bridge gets congested, entire production lines shut down. Workers go home. Analysts warn that blocking the Gordie Howe Bridge could disrupt cross-border production schedules, increase costs for American manufacturers, and jeopardize the U.S. auto industry. But Trump's tariffs have already put 32,500 jobs at risk in steel and aluminum alone. 23,000 steel jobs, 9,500 aluminum jobs. These aren't projections. These are actual workers who've received layoff notices. General Motors laid off 500 workers in Oshawa, Ontario, just last month. Windsor has the highest unemployment rate in the country. Manufacturing jobs as a share of Ontario's total employment fell below 10% for the first time since 1976. The Moran family isn't just protecting toll revenue. They're protecting their duty-free gas stations and stores at both ends of the bridge. 60 cents from every gallon sold goes straight to Moran, not to Michigan highways. The state gets nothing. Critics have pointed this out for years. Operators of large trucks under the International Fuel Tax Agreement should get Michigan tax refunds, but they can't because the tax was never paid. In 2012, Michigan's Department of Agriculture sued Moran's company Amex for mislabeling fuel, advertising 93 octane, while tests showed as little as 91.2. This is who Trump is protecting. Meanwhile, the publicly owned Gordie Howe Bridge would have meant transparent toll pricing, no duty-free loopholes, and direct highway connections that save time and money for everyone who uses it. But now it sits there, 98% complete, blocked by a presidential decree. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins called Trump's threat just insane. He said the bridge will open one way or another. Canada already paid for it. Michigan already owns half. Canadian officials say they've completed all the work on their side. The U.S. Customs Plaza, paid for by Canada, is ready to go. The only thing missing is Trump's permission to open. And every day it stays closed, Matthew Moran collects tolls on traffic that has nowhere else to go. Think about the bigger picture here. This isn't just about one bridge or one billionaire family. This is about what happens when trade policy becomes a tool for protecting wealthy donors instead of American workers. Trump campaigned on making other countries pay. He said he'd bring back manufacturing jobs, strengthen the American economy, make deals that benefit working people. Instead, Canadian Prime Minister Carney is signing trade deals with China. American households are paying $1,300 more per year in tariff costs. Tourism is down, exports are collapsing, and a billionaire who bought access to the president gets to keep his monopoly. The USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, comes up for review this year. It's scheduled for 2026. That agreement kept most Canadian goods tariff-free and maintained the integrated supply chains that American manufacturers depend on. But Trump's already threatened to blow it up. In January, he said he might impose a 100% tariff on all Canadian imports if Canada finalized its trade agreement with China. 100%. That would double the price of everything we import from Canada overnight. Crude oil, natural gas, auto parts, lumber, steel, aluminum. Canadian officials estimate a 100% tariff could raise U.S. inflation by 1.5 to 2% almost immediately. Energy prices would spike, auto prices would soar. And for what? To punish Canada for doing exactly what Trump pushed them to do by making trade with the U.S. impossible? The Bank of Canada released a report last week warning that the Canadian economy is at a crossroads. They're forecasting GDP growth of only 1.25% over the next 2 years because of Trump's tariffs. But they also noted something interesting. Canadian businesses are adapting faster than expected. They're finding new markets. They've already recovered $11 billion of the $18.5 billion they lost in U.S. exports by pivoting to Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Oil exports are up, aircraft and jet engines are selling well. The sector's getting crushed? steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. Industries hit with 50% U.S. tariffs. Those industries lost $8.8 billion relative to 2024. The structural shift is already happening. Canada's diversifying away from dependence on the U.S. market. And once those supply chains move, once companies invest in new partnerships and distribution networks in other countries, they don't just flip back. This is permanent economic damage to American leverage. Remember, Canada is America's largest trading partner, bigger than China, bigger than Mexico. In 2024, bilateral trade between the U.S. and Canada totaled over $900 billion. The Windsor-Detroit corridor alone handles more trade than the entire U.S.-Japan relationship. Take out that bridge, and you're looking at an economic catastrophe that ripples through the entire Midwest. Michigan's economy depends on it. Ohio's economy depends on it. The entire Great Lakes manufacturing base depends on seamless cross-border trade. But Trump sees a political opportunity. He gets to posture about being tough on Canada, claim he's fighting for American workers, and collect campaign contributions from a billionaire who benefits from the chaos. It's the perfect scam except for the workers who lose their jobs when factories shut down because parts can't cross the border efficiently. Here's what's coming next. The Gordie Howe Bridge will eventually open. Canada and Michigan both own it. It's governed by an international authority with equal representation from both countries. Trump can delay it, but he can't stop it forever. When it opens, the Ambassador Bridge will face real competition for the first time in 95 years. The Morowns know this. That's why they're fighting so hard. That's why they're spending hundreds of thousands on lobbying and campaign contributions. Every month, the Gordie Howe stays closed is another month of monopoly profits. But Windsor's mayor is right. One way or another, that bridge will open. The question is, how much damage Trump does to U.S.-Canada relations in the meantime? How many American workers lose their jobs? How many companies decide it's not worth dealing with the uncertainty and move their supply chains permanently out of the U.S.? And how much political capital Trump burns defending a billionaire's toll booth while claiming to fight for working people? Trump positioned himself as the dealmaker, the guy who'd make other countries pay, the guy who'd bring back jobs and make America win again. Instead, Canada built a bridge, China got a new trade partner, American workers are stuck paying tariffs, and a toll booth family protects its monopoly. If you want to track what happens next, keep an eye on the USMCA renegotiation coming up this year. That's the trade agreement that's kept most Canadian goods tariff-free and maintained the integrated North American supply chains. If Trump blows that up to please his donors, if he actually follows through on that 100% tariff threat, you haven't seen Backfire yet. The economic damage would be catastrophic, not just for Canada, for American manufacturers, American workers, American consumers. But Trump's already shown he's willing to sacrifice American interests to protect billionaire donors. The Gordie Howe Bridge is just the latest example, and the clearest proof that when Trump says he's fighting for working people, you should probably check who's writing the checks.